The league stinks this year. It absolutely stinks. There are a couple good teams, and I'll tell you who they are right now. It's the Eagles, the Bills, the Chiefs. The Baltimore Ravens are a good team. I don't care what anybody says. Man, it's a happy Tuesday morning here on Good Morning NFC East. Tony DeShields once again. If you guys don't know me by now, my name is Kerr from CBSSports.com. My midterm grades came out last week for the entire NFL, but we are officially at the midway point of the season, Tone. And let me tell you, I can kind of breathe a sigh of relief here because the first half for me usually goes slow.
Right.
This year it didn't. It was really bizarre. Normally October goes slow for me in the NFL, and it picks up around November. This first half went quick.
Well, why does it go slow for you?
I don't know. I think the Phillies being in the playoffs had a lot to do with it. I had other things going on. It's that drag of the season. You know, you get excited about the football season, but then you hit that lull. I always hit in like week 4 to week 7, week 8. And then the playoff races start juicing up. Well, maybe the Eagles being 8-0 have a lot to do with it because there's a storyline every single week. And remember last year they were 2-5, and you're just like, is this going to be one of those like just rebuilding years? Is this just going to be a long year? But maybe the Phillies being in the World Series had a lot to do with it, making that postseason run. But I don't know. It's just different this year. I can't figure it out.
I know a lot of people felt like the Phillies being in the World Series, the Philadelphia Union being in the MLS Cup, the Flyers being back, basketball being back. I know a lot of people had a pleasant distraction, especially with the Phillies, right? But not me. I'll be honest. For me, I'm always anxious during the NFL season. Because I love football, and I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan. No shame in that, right? With the 8-0 with the 8-0 record, but this season has had its highs, had its lows for all teams involved, and it's materialized in different ways. And, with the NFC East, there's been a lot more highs than lows. So, since we're talking about the midterm grades or just the midterm evaluation, right? What's been, and let's start with the worst team in the division, and that's the Commanders, right? I feel like there's a lot of storylines, a lot of narratives surrounding that franchise on and off the field. So, through 8 weeks or through 9 weeks, going into 10 weeks, what's been your evaluation of the Washington Commanders thus far?
Well, they're definitely helter-skelter, Tone. Because they start out 1-4. And we remember, we said on the show before, how disappointing the Washington Commanders actually were. Just based on what Carson Wentz was providing, how bad their offensive line was, how Ron Rivera didn't seem like he could coach his way out of a wet paper bag. And Wentz gets hurt. And they won. Right. They won a game. He got hurt, and Wentz played through that finger injury. Taylor Heinicke comes in. They have a big win over the Colts, and again, we'll get to the Colts in a second. But they rally to get to 4-4. You're like, okay, this team, they're better with Taylor Heinicke. They're not bad, and they got the Minnesota Vikings on the ropes. And what do? They blow a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter, and Taylor Heinicke. I actually have his numbers in that fourth quarter here, Tone. Are you ready for this? 2 for 4, 8 yards, 1 pick. And 10 of those, 10 yards came on the last play when Minnesota was just basically giving Washington yards. So technically, he had -2 yards before that garbage last play. You know what? They don't have a quarterback. Plain and simple. The Washington Commanders do not have one. I have a feeling they're going to go back to Carson Wentz at some point just because they are paying him. But the bottom line, it's the same story every year with Washington. It feels like it's a good football team, or at least an average football team at worst, but they just don't have a quarterback, so they're going to be mediocre.
Yeah, it's funny because the Washington Commanders have always seemed to have talented rosters, but they've always shortchanged that quarterback position. But, let's try to put it in perspective, right? The organization has tried to put pieces around guys, right? So at what point do guys just not perform up to par, especially at that quarterback position? And you can make an argument. Things started to fall off a cliff ever since the RG3 injury. And then you had Kirk Cousins franchise tagging him every season. There was just a level of instability for well near a decade. So it's only a matter of time before it starts to rear its ugly head. And then on top of that, you have the offseason issues with Daniel Snyder and so on and so forth. So how do you think that has affected the football? How do you think that has affected the football product, the offseason shenanigans with Daniel Snyder?
Oh, I think it always affects that team. I'll say this. I don't think it affects Ron Rivera. I think Ron Rivera knows how to get rid of those distractions and coach because
Okay.
he's built with this in Carolina. I think that's more of a Jason Wright, their GM, and hired in him. I think that's their problem, I guess. Does it affect the players on the field? I don't. I think, though, the quality that organization provides hurts. FedEx Field is a dump. We all know that. A lot of opposing teams' fans go in there. It's a logistics nightmare. It's not really a home field advantage. Like, I don't know how old you were when RFK Stadium was toned. I mean, the last year of RFK Stadium for me was like 8, 9 years old. But I remember that being a dangerous place to play, a very tough place to play. Kind of like the Vet was, kind of like the Link is now. It was a place you did not want to go play on a Sunday because of the crowd, and it was in DC, and they just haven't gotten that at FedEx Field, and that's why I think they're beatable. The loudest I've heard that crowd in about 3 years was when they were up 17-7 in the fourth quarter, and the fans were chanting Heineke, and then they just implode. It's the Washington Commanders are just a very interesting football team, to say the least, and I keep saying this to myself. How dangerous would this team be if they would have just kept Kirk Cousins?
They definitely would have been a threat in the NFC East, and the record would definitely be better than 4-5. Let's transition to the New York Giants. Now, the New York Giants have had a surprising season thus far. We knew they were in rebuild like they've been the past handful of years. We knew they've been trying to get the coaching situation sorted out. And it looks like they've done that with Brian Daboll and also with the GM position. It looks like they've got that figured out as well. So the New York Giants going into week 10, what's your evaluation of those guys?
I gotta give them an A+ if I had to grade them. Who would have thought the Giants would win 6 games by now, right? I mean, we were talking the first 2 weeks of the show, and the Giants are gonna be bad. This is gonna be a terrible season for them. We're not gonna be talking about them much. No, we talk about them almost every day. The only time we don't is when they're on a bye week. But you gotta give Brian Daboll a lot of credit for what he's been able to do with Daniel Jones, making him look like he could be their quarterback in 2023. Saquon Barkley has been outstanding, top 5 running back in the NFL again. And they're doing this without any wide receivers, with a patchwork offensive line. Andrew Thomas has become a stud, by the way. Wink Martindale's done an excellent job defensively. Mike Kafka's going to get head coaching looks. And I'll be honest, Tone, we were talking backstage about the Giants and the Texans. Can the Texans give the Giants a run for their money on Sunday? But the way the Giants are playing, I don't expect hiccups there against Houston and against Detroit. I mean, it's very possible they go into that Thanksgiving game with the Cowboys 8-2.
Here's the thing, though. The New York Giants are coming off a loss, and they had their bye week, so they had some time to
a good team.
That too. But I mean, again, Daniel Jones is still their quarterback, right? So how long can he sustain this level of success? How long can he steer the ship? How long can Brian Daboll keep him from being the weak link? Because Brian Daboll's done a very good job at hiding his deficiencies.
I don't think it's going to last past December. I think it'll last the next 2 weeks because I just think they're a more talented team. And Detroit's going to give them problems, by the way, because Detroit can score points. But I don't know. I just don't like the Lions trading TJ Hawkinson. I don't think it helped them. I actually just wrote about that for my one thing we learned about each team. Their tight end scored 2 touchdowns Sunday, but overall, they're missing that production between the 20s. They're missing Hawkinson's blocking. I just think the Giants have a mismatch there. I'm curious to see how they do in their rematch with the Cowboys. Can they put up a better performance than they did in week 3? I don't know what they can, Tone. The 2 best teams they played, the Cowboys and the Seahawks, I mean, they went to 4 with them.
Yeah, and I mean, I know the Seahawks are a good team, right? But I feel like people are still waiting for that team to fall off the cliff as well. I don't really think it's going to happen because they're well coached, and they have even though they have a lot of rookies playing, those rookies are making an immediate impact in Seattle. Let's transition to the Dallas Cowboys, one of the more fascinating teams in the division. Not just because of the on-field product, but also because of Jerry Jones and how he markets that product and how he always manages to keep his name in the news, on the news wire, so to speak. So the Dallas Cowboys right now 6-2, and they're tied with the New York Giants at 6-2. So right now they're tied for second place in the division. What's been your take on the Dallas Cowboys as of late? And also, just to keep in mind as well, they had that stretch without Dak Prescott. Cooper Rush took over, steered the ship for a little while. What's been your evaluation of everything you've seen from those guys?
They're coming off their bye week too, and they got Green Bay, then they got Minnesota, then they got the Giants. They got a tough stretch coming up here, and I think they will be Green Bay Sunday. Again, it's Tuesday. This all can change. I'm getting tired of the little brother complex that they try to make the Eagles, but in reality, they're the little brother. They're Beaver to Wally, because I look at it as you're mad the Eagles are better than you right now. They're a better football team than you, and they showed that in week 6. And Dallas is a really good football team. I'm not going to hide that. I think Dallas is the Eagles' biggest threat in the NFC because they do have the defense. And look, the Eagles scored points off that defense. So let's not hide that fact here. But they do have a defense that's aggressive and gets after the quarterback.
But really quickly, do you not think the San Francisco 49ers are one of the bigger threats?
Not right now. I could change my mind in 3 weeks. I think the 49ers are good, but they got to worry about the Seattle Seahawks first. So I just think right now on paper, yeah, I think the 49ers are going to be a problem. There's no doubt about that. But from the sample size I got and from what I've watched, it's right now it's the Cowboys. And look, I won't hide it. They are going to have Dak Prescott back for this second game. And it might not mean anything. Like the Eagles-Cowboys second game may not mean anything because of the advantage the Eagles built. But Dak Prescott does change the dimension of that offense. I actually think the Cowboys are better when Ezekiel Elliott's hurt. But Jerry Jones is going to play. I do think this is funny, though, Tony. For a team that thinks they could beat the Eagles right now, and I'm not talking players, I'm talking fans here. If that's the case, why are you going after Odell?
Yeah, supposedly Michael Gallup was supposed to be their guy, and it was supposed to be Michael Gallup season when he comes home, when he comes back. He was supposed to come back like the Grim Reaper all of a sudden. But I think they see the writing on the wall, like you said, right? They see that blow for blow, they probably don't have the offense to be able to keep up with the Philadelphia Eagles, and their defense has shown some holes in the run game, just like the Eagles have. But the Eagles just have a much more potent, much more efficient offense in comparison to the Dallas Cowboys. I think their offense is ranked in the bottom half of the league, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff.
No, you're right. And a lot of that has to do with the Cooper Rush thing. That's where I think Dak Prescott makes the difference. But this is where, we want to talk about Odell here. I don't know if he lands in this division. I think the Cowboys are going to make a push. I think the Giants will make a push because they need him badly. But I'll be honest, I think the Green Bay Packers and the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs to an extent. I don't think Kansas City's ultimately going to get them. I think it's a luxury. But I think the Bills and the Cowboys and the Bills and the Packers are going to give him a multi-year deal because I think both those teams badly, badly need him.
Yeah, I can see him going to either one of those teams more likely than others because he has an opportunity to get legitimate targets. Him coming to Philadelphia, not really a target hub, for a guy like him. Same thing with the Giants. They run that ball more than they pass it. And the Dallas Cowboys, that's kind of what they're trending towards as well. They're starting to lean more on their running game. But the Packers, the Bills, those teams are trying to throw the ball, especially the Packers. They've been limited, and they need to open up their offense, but they're not a winning situation. So I honestly think he's going to end up in Buffalo. Von Miller's already been recruiting him, and I just think that's just the easiest decision for him to make. Now, when it gets cold, will that ACL hold up? That's the question, right? So we'll see. Yeah, he's been cleared. We'll see how that thing pans out. Now let's transition to the beast of the NFC East, the Philadelphia Eagles. They are the lone undefeated team in the NFL at 8-0, and they've just been feasting on their opponents? Have they had the occasional hiccup, the ups and downs? Sure. But they've always managed to have that signature drive, that signature moment, that signature play to continue to maintain their momentum. So, what's been your take, your evaluation? What have you seen from the Philadelphia Eagles that have allowed them to go 8-0 thus far?
I mean, their quarterback, Jalen Hurts, is, if he's not the front runner, he's pretty darn close to him. I mean, let's be real here. Hurts is the best quarterback on the best team in the NFL right now. He's the guy. And I got to give Jalen Hurts a lot of credit for his progressions. He's top 6 in completion percentage. He's top 2 in passer rating. I mean, every major statistical stat, Jalen Hurts is involved in the top 5. Passing yards, again, some teams haven't had their bye yet, but Jalen Hurts is still in the top 10 in that. Like, he's throwing for touchdowns, he's running for touchdowns. We don't talk about Jalen Hurts running the football anymore because he doesn't have to.
Right.
And I keep going back to this. For the people who say the Eagles haven't played anybody, yes, it's true. They've had the weakest strength of schedule in the league. But you know how hard it is to not trail in the second half through 9 weeks? Do you know how hard that is? How many minutes have the Eagles trailed in the second half? 0. They have led by 10 points every single game. That is hard to do. That is very hard to do. So if you want to discredit the Eagles for that, I got news for you. Teams that discredit schedules, teams that, or fans that discredit this stuff, schedules, who you played, that means you're looking up. That means you know they're good. And you're just trying to find a reason why they're not good. And everybody does this with the Bills and the Chiefs, right? That's what the Eagles are. They are in that stratosphere. The Eagles are a damn good football team, Tone. I don't see it slipping anytime soon. They just can beat you in so many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a question for you before we get our guy Tom Kelly up on the screen. We're going to bring him up after the break, you guys. So make sure you guys stay locked in. But Jeff, excuse me. I'm really fascinated and I'm curious. Why do you think it's so hard? Because even though fans acknowledge their team is 8-0, right? I still feel like there's this air or this aura around the city, around the fan base, that they're just waiting for the other shoe to drop, or they're just they're not used to being the hunted, or maybe they find it hard to believe, and they just, I don't know, like there is something going on around the city where, yeah, you believe in the team, you like where your team is, but I still feel like a lot of people believe they're illegitimate. Could it be the schedule? I disagree, because there's a lot of parity this year, and which teams in the NFL can you honestly say are consistently good? Not many teams have really been able to put up a consistent product.
The league stinks. If you want to be honest, I've been saying this since about the 3rd or 4th week. The league stinks this year. It absolutely stinks. There are a couple good teams, and I'll tell you who they are right now. It's the Eagles, the Bills, the Chiefs. The Baltimore Ravens are a good team. I don't care what anybody says. They're the other team that's letting 10 points every game, by the way. They just blew 3. I mean, Baltimore has their case to be 9-0. The Miami Dolphins are good. The Dallas Cowboys are good. The Minnesota Vikings are good. But, again, you see weaknesses in the Vikings, in the Cowboys. Yeah, there's a weakness in the Eagles too, but it's not as glowing. You know what I mean? Like, the Bills, I think you're starting to see that glaring weakness. The Chiefs, you got Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. You're going to win games. But, yeah, I just think fans are waiting for, okay, when is that first loss going to be? I don't really want to go into the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like 60-1. I think they know there's going to be a slip up or two. It's just when it's going to be. The problem is, when is it going to be? Because, yeah, I think Eagles can lose to the Cowboys. I think they can lose to the Giants. I think they can lose to the Titans. But every single week, they just feel like it's a 1-0 mentality. And I think the pressure of being undefeated will get to them at some point. It just does. It just may be an unexpected week. But I'm just going to say this to Eagles fans: don't be ripping the Bills because they lose a game, because guess what? They're going to be coming after the Eagles if that does happen. Just because that's the way the NFL is. You just got to treat it as a blip on the radar, and that's it. Every team has a bad week.
Absolutely. This is the NFL, and it also means not for long. You guys are locked in on Good Morning NFC East. He's Jeff Kerr. I'm your guy, Tone DeShields II. Next up, we have our guy, Tom Kelly, coming on to give his analysis of the NFL landscape. Keep it locked, you guys. You don't want to miss this.